Hey there. I'm at the staircase at Laveta Terrace and McDuff Street. This just connects the two streets, and it's easily one of the widest staircases I've seen in Los Angeles. Not the tallest or highest number of steps by any means, but certainly one of the grandest. I got off work a little early today, and I decided to come down and just watch the sunset from here. I've probably got about 10 minutes before the sun goes behind the hills, and I don't really know what I'm going to talk about, so I'm going to spitball. I had a great New Year. I mean, aside from the difficulties with my relationship ending and aside from the busyness of work, things are really looking up. I'm still working out, and today I actually, on the drive here, I held the camera out the window the whole time, and I filmed basically from La Brea and Hollywood all the way to about here, and I was thinking about how it's going to be really interesting if I can hold on to that footage. And Los Angeles is constantly in flux. I mean, it's a big city. It's always moving around. Construction, so much has been built. My alma mater, Emerson College, just opened their Emerson Los Angeles campus. And I've been watching that thing be built for quite some time. I want to be able to look back at some of my favorite moments in this city and say, oh, that's the way it was then. And be able to see how it's changed. And I really pray that it's going to be for the better. And I think so. One of the things that I'm afraid of is that I'm fearful that cities will become the playgrounds of the rich, and in a large part they already are. To a certain, poor people and low-wage jobs still exist in the cities, but they live in the outskirts or they live in the rundown areas of town. But increasingly in places like Manhattan or San Francisco and even LA, they're being driven out by young people who are moving in or by rich people who are moving into the cities because cities are becoming popular and in vogue again. I mean, the problems of the old days with cities, pollution and all that, are largely gone. I mean, yes, there's still crime and yes, there's still gangs, but a lot of organized crime has gone digital with the internet. I mean, the internet's changed the face of cities in ways that we don't even think about. And because of that, it's not it's been the safest it's been in Los Angeles since the 60s. I mean, this place it's not perfect, but it's definitely getting better. And one of the things that is kind of messed up about that is that, of course, the people who live and work here aren't going to be able to live and work here anymore. And I, unfortunately, can be even grouped in with those people as a gentrifier or whatever, because I'm a middle-class, white-collar worker moving into a relatively low-income Hispanic neighborhood. And what's odd to me about that is that you have stuff like Yelp, and what that does is that when I moved in, there was a jam company on the corner of my street. And that company opened a cafe. So they basically made homemade jams, and then they opened a cafe to sell their jams and other breakfast foods. That place has gotten really popular with the young 20-something well-to-do crowd. And every day I leave for work, there are young white couples walking down the street, getting to this eatery. And in the 2 years since, every single store that was on that block, on that side of the street only, has been evicted or moved out, and some new hip store, like a wine store, comic book store, a vintage clothing store, they've all occupied all 5 storefronts that are on that block. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. That's the free market, and sad for those who lose out. But it's interesting that none of those, the reason those businesses are all on the same block and on the same side of the street is because the cafe is the anchor, brings people in. They don't live in this community. They find the community because of Yelp or whatever, and they come to the community to eat at that place, and then they go back. They make no investment in the community. So the sad part about that is that's why that development is only reaching that one block. It's not because it's because they're waiting for their food at the cafe, and then they wander into these other shops. And so none of that investment has happened anywhere else on the block. The sun has gone down. You see the lighting change? I'll do a little quick time lapse so you can see. Whoop. And so, at the end of the day, we're faced with this weird situation where in the past a community was a physical location where, those who lived within a certain distance, the pre-war development pattern was that you lived within a certain distance and you were able to walk to the things you needed or commute, with public transit. And now we're in this modern era where, yes, there's still physical community, but then there's also a digital community where people who have similar tastes and interests find other people with those same tastes and interests, and then they occupy a digital community of places that exist and are connected together through a network. So that's a really interesting dynamic for a city, and I think it's going to change the way that cities reinvigorate and gentrify, because there's no reason for me to spend a ton of money opening a shop in a really hip part of town when all I really need to do is get the key tastemakers of that community to come and go to my restaurant, have a good experience, and post a good Yelp review, and people will go there and find it. So I can go to a low-income place and get a cheap storefront and change that dynamic. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.